Hi there, I'm Autumn and I'm the owner of A Balanced Canine. I'm a canine behaviorist and dog trainer, as well as a canine and feline nutrition counselor. I have been working in the pet industry for 8 years now, and I've done just about everything that there is to do in the pet industry. I started off in a grooming salon, which is originally what got me interested in nutrition, because we would see dogs come in all of the time with bad skin conditions, horrible hot spots, and then watch the changes happen when the owners would make a simple diet change. This channel is going to be about dog behavior, dog nutrition, how those things are related. And I apologize, this is my first video and I'm not savvy with editing, so this one might be a little bit rough, but if you stick around, we'll get better as time goes on. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about pet food, and in particular Champion pet food and the recent sellout to Mars. This came as a huge surprise to many people because Champion Pet Foods, if you're not familiar, they own Orijen Acana, has been a privately owned pet food company for many years now. They did a couple of years ago sell out to an investment firm, and we did see some less than favorable changes to the food when that happened. But they have been acquired by Mars now, and that will finalize in January. The problem with this is that they were one of the best kibble options on the market at the time. It is really difficult to find a reliable kibble, and the reason for that is it's an extremely under-regulated industry. The industry is regulated, or would be regulated, by the FDA. The little AFCO stamp on your food actually has very little meaning. AFCO has no regulatory authority. They write some rather relaxed guidelines on what can make it into food or what can't. And the pet food companies can actually choose to follow that or not, depending on the laws in their state. That being said, the guidelines on pet food are extremely relaxed, and the things that are allowed to make it into pet food is atrocious. So if you've been following me on Instagram for some time, you're already well aware of most of this stuff, but I am going to jump into why Champion was so good and why the sellout is such a negative thing for many people. So Champion Pet Foods set the bar themselves, right? So there are very relaxed guidelines by AFCO and the FDA on dog food, and it is really unique and unusual to find a pet food company that is setting the bar higher for themselves. And Champion Pet Food was one of those. So I don't have any of the dog food here with me right now, but I do have some of the cat food. So the brand that I've been recommending to people that needed a kibble option for years and years was Orijen and their other line, Acana. So Orijen produced kibble that was extremely high in meat content. The average bag of dry dog food and kibble has 50% or less of meat ingredients. And Orijen actually was between 85 to 90% meat ingredients per bag, with 15 to 10% fruit, veg ingredients afterwards. That is really rare to find in a pet food. So this was the number one selling point, right? The ingredients are pretty good. They use whole food ingredients so that they don't have to use as many synthetic vitamins. Synthetic vitamins are toxic in high amounts. And it's always good to get the majority of your nutrition from whole food sources. They used to be a lot better. There have been some changes that were made in the past few years. They follow a whole prey model diet. So what I mean by this is it is an extruded kibble, but they use whole prey ingredients. I actually had the unique opportunity to go and see how this food was made and where the ingredients were sourced from, and it was just like miles above the rest. Now this was a few years ago, so changes could have happened. Got a cat here somewhere. We have 3 cats, so this happens all the time. For example, the back of this the ingredient panel here is chicken, salmon, turkey, whole herring, whole mackerel, chicken liver, turkey giblets, eggs, dehydrated chicken, dehydrated turkey, sardine, tons and tons of meat ingredients. There's also pumpkin, butternut squash, collard greens, whole apples, whole pears, and all of that kind of stuff, because Champion really believed in trying to use as many whole food sources as possible so that they wouldn't have to use as many synthetic vitamins. So 3 things that I look for when I'm assessing a pet food. 1, ingredient list. Because if I don't like the ingredients, there's no reason to even continue to look through the other things, right? Number 2 is the sourcing of the ingredients. Because even if they have a fantastic ingredient panel, if the sourcing of your ingredients is bad or those are poor quality ingredients, it doesn't matter, the food is crap. 3rd thing that I look for is the manufacturing process, so production. How is the food made? Because if you bake it into oblivion, the ingredients and the sourcing doesn't matter because that nutritional level has dropped significantly. So those are the 3 things that I assess as a rule of thumb for pet foods. That being said, Champion really stood out above the rest, right? So ingredients were really good. Sourcing of the ingredients was really good. They changed this recently, but they used to tell you down to the exact farm where those ingredients would come from, and it is really difficult to find a pet food company that will tell you that. Or I should say it's really difficult to find a canned or kibble company that will tell you that. The production process, so let's talk about that. When the food comes into the manufacturing facility, it is generally in whole food form, most of the ingredients. Most of them come in raw too, and it immediately goes into production from there. The production process was 1 low heat temperature, cooked for a longer amount of time to retain as many of the natural nutrients as possible. Typically, kibble goes through 4 to 5 high heat processes, and before the meat even makes it to the kibble company, it has already gone through another 3 to 4 stripping processes, and this really eliminates a lot of the nutrients that may have been in there. So typically companies then will have to add in a significant amount of synthetic vitamin packets to bring those levels back up. So this is why Orijen stood out. Now, I've been recommending this food for 8 years. So when they sold to Mars, this was a huge problem to me. I didn't really know what else to recommend because I have seen a lot of other kibbles and this one really stood out. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I do raw feed my animals, and I believe that we should feed them as close to what they were naturally intended to eat as possible. That being said, it is not convenient for everyone for different reasons, accessibility, budget, time, and that's okay. There are other ways to feed your pet. It doesn't have to be raw. There are cooked options, and I always like to have a kibble option to recommend to people who need it, because let's be real, if you have large dogs or multiple dogs in the house, feeding an entirely fresh diet just might not be attainable for you, and so I always want to have a kibble option to offer you guys. Now that being said, I always recommend that if you're feeding a kibble, you add as many fresh whole foods to it as you are able to. So even replacing 10% of your pet's processed meal with whole fresh ingredients, so fresh meat, a little bit of veg, things like that, are going to have massive health effects for your pet. No one, people, dogs, cats, anything, are going to be able to thrive entirely off of a dry diet. This is highly processed food. Even the best kibbles are very processed foods, and processed foods are inflammatory, so they cause all kinds of health conditions down the road. And I don't say that to shame kibble feeders, because hey, I kibble feed every once in a while. If we are going out of town, I leave kibble for the pet sitters. I use kibble as training treats sometimes, so there's no shame here. But it is the fact of the matter. And adding any fresh food into your pet's diet that you can is beneficial. So that was one of the reasons, or a few of the reasons, why Orijen was our #1 recommendation. Their other brand, Acana, was 70% meat ingredients, 30% fruit and veg. I didn't recommend that one quite as often because it is a higher starch level, but it's still much lower than your average pet food company. Now, let's talk a little bit about their buyout a few years ago. So they lost the majority of the company to an investment firm because unfortunately this happens with pretty much any kibble company that wants to expand, pet food company, period. You have to bring on investors. Now that company is then answering to investors that want to see a quick return on their money, right? So a couple of things that we started to see changes to. A few years ago, and I want to say in 2017 or 2018, don't quote me on that, Champion removed all of their foods from Chewy.com. And Chewy's owned by PetSmart, I believe. So the reason that they did that was because they wanted to support the independent retailers that have built up their brand. So the small mom and pop shops. And they said that they were removing their food and they would never sell to big retailers like that because they wanted to support the shops that built their brand. Then maybe less than 2 years after they came out with that statement, they started selling to Petco. So obviously a lot of pet stores were very upset about this. Not get into all of the drama with that, but that was just one of the promises that they've broken. They've broken promises to their consumers as well. And one of those promises is that they would never sell out because big brands, and this was when they were speaking about Purina possibly buying them out. They said that they would never sell to a large company like that because their ethics just didn't line up with their values. And then here they go selling to Mars, who owns some of the worst pet food companies there is. But it's pretty unfortunate, and what's bad is that yes, they sold to this company so that they could probably expand and do more, and I'm sure that they got a ton of money for it. But the problem is that they're not answering to this parent company, right? And this parent company is going to want more food to come out at a lower cost. So typically when this happens, we do start seeing changes to formulation. And pet food companies are actually not required to tell consumers about changes to their pet foods for quite a long time. The last time I checked, it was 2 years. They didn't have to make changes to their label after changing formulation. That may have changed since then, but that should be illegal. So your dog who may have specific allergies to something could do really well on a food, right? That pet food company could decide to change something in the ingredients and they don't have to display it on the label for a long time. We are no longer recommending Champion pet foods. They've broken a lot of promises. There have been some issues with them potentially lying about where they were sourcing their ingredients in this past year. I no longer find them trustworthy, and I will not be feeding them to my pets or feeding them to the dogs that I train. I won't be feeding it to our cats, any of that. So we will not be recommending this food anymore. So that brought us to a very long search of what food would we be recommending as a replacement? Because I am not just going to stop recommending a kibble to people. There are a lot of people that believe that you absolutely should not feed kibble and just refuse to recommend any brands. And I'm not going to do that because I think it's a little bit of an elitist mindset, to be honest. And I think that it fails to recognize that that is just not attainable for a lot of people, like the majority of the population, to be honest. So we went through probably 100 different brands, and we did all kinds of short synopsis brand reviews on our Instagram page. It was difficult. It was really hard to find something that matched up to that because, you know, it's an underregulated industry. They were setting their own bar, and it's difficult to find another pet food company that is also doing that. I found 2 brands. I went back and forth with the companies and asked them questions and talked to their reps, and then they had to go back and forth with their bosses, and you know, because they're all very hush-hush about the info that they're giving out to you. Originally, we were looking at Lotus, which is an oven-baked food, so not an extruded kibble, but little oven-baked pellets. Rawls, which despite the name, it's not actually raw dog food. It is a kibble, and it's owned by the people that own Old Mother Hubbard, those treats, if you're familiar with those. And we were also looking into Essence, which is owned by Pets Global Inc. or Global Pets Inc., something like that. They make Signature and Fussy Cat too, if you're familiar with those. And we were also looking into Carna 4. So we removed Lotus because the carb content on that food was very high. Dogs have no nutritional need for carbohydrates at all. They were intended to eat 50% protein, 50% fat, and they derived all of their energy from that, unlike us. Kibble, in and of itself, and canned food, is going to be starchy because you need starchy ingredients to bind all of the ingredients together and hold it in that convenient little form. However, there are some that are a lot starchier than others. For example, Orijen and Acana were much lower in starch, and that was one of the primary reasons that I recommended them. Lotus was very, very high in carbohydrates, so we nixed that one. Rawls was refusing to answer a lot of my questions, and if you cannot answer my questions, I'm not going to recommend your food to people. I counsel people on nutrition. That's my job. And if you can't answer simple questions about your formulation or your sourcing, I don't trust you. So we removed that one because they were just flat out refusing to answer questions. Carna 4 is not really a kibble, so it doesn't go through an extrusion process. It's another baked, little baked like kibble pieces. So Carna 4 uses whole food ingredients. So they don't use any meat meals, byproducts, synthetic vitamins, nothing. It is all whole food sources. It doesn't go through an extrusion process, so it's whole foods that are baked together at a lower temp. So that was really intriguing to me. The thing is that it is probably much lower in meat content than Orijen was, but you're also eliminating a lot of the extra processed ingredients that were in Orijen too, because they did use dehydrated meat products and meat meals, just not quite as much as the average dog food. So that is a bonus there. On top of that, their ingredient lists are like 8 to 12 ingredients maybe, where a normal bag you flip it over and you've got, 25 to 30 ingredients and you don't even know what that lower half means. So I like that about it a lot too. They were very helpful. It started off kind of slow at first, but when I explained the situation to them, they were very helpful. They've been getting back to me with all of my questions, and I was really impressed with that. It's a very small company that is ran out of Canada. The other brand, Essence. So Essence was 85% meat ingredients, 15% other ingredients. We have decided on recommending Essence and Carna 4. And the reason why is that Carna 4 can be difficult to find, and it is also much pricier. That being said, I wholeheartedly feel like I trust them. They answered all of my questions really well. Again, they are very helpful, and their ingredients are really simple, easy to read. There's not many of them, and they're all whole food sources, which is incredible for a pet food company. I'm gonna correct myself again there. That is incredible for a kibble or canned company. Obviously, if you have a raw pet food company or a fresh cooked company, they tend to use whole food sources. Essence, so Essence is 85% meat ingredients, 15% other ingredients, so very close to Orijen. And I'm not sure when exactly they came out with this line of pet food, but I'd be willing to bet that it was probably based on the Orijen line. The unfortunate thing is that they don't really use whole food sources instead of synthetic vitamins. So there is a significant amount of synthetic vitamins in there, but there's also high meat content. They were able to tell me where all of the meat came from, how it was raised, what it was fed. That was really impressive. It's very impressive when a company knows, a kibble company, and this is sad because they should all know this, but knows exactly what the animals that are in the food were eating and all of that kind of stuff. They do use a low temp extrusion process. So I also liked that. And so they checked off all the boxes, okay? They checked off ingredients, they checked off sourcing, and they checked off production. The downsides, though, again, are quite a bit of synthetic vitamins, but it is also a lot more accessible for people, and the price is going to be very similar to Orijen and Acana. Now, my number one recommendation is going to be carnivore. And I've got a bag of that here. A big bag. And I flip this over. You can see that. This food can be rather pricey. It is still going to be significantly cheaper than raw feeding or fresh food feeding, but it is a little bit pricier. So I wanted to offer carnivore and then also essence as an option to people. And I would like to put out there that if you can fresh feed, that is going to be your best option. Raw food companies are regulated more thoroughly by the FDA than kibble and canned companies. But if that's not a possibility for you, carnivore is my top recommendation. However, it is lower in meat content, so replace as much of the food with whole fresh meats as you can. And then for essence, this is also a processed food, but it's gone through an extrusion process and they do use meals and dehydrated products. So it is much more processed than carnivore. For this one, I recommend using as much fresh food as possible. They are both really good brands, but we still have to take into account the fact that they are a processed food and our pets need as many whole fresh foods as possible. I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. We're at about 25 minutes here, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment box below. I am going to continue to do things with this channel and hopefully I'll get better at speaking to the camera and also editing the videos afterwards, so stick around. But I'm planning on doing some behavior stuff, how behavior and nutrition are related, and also dog training tips as well. But we're probably going to do a lot of nutrition stuff here because while I'm a dog behaviorist and a dog trainer, nutrition has always been my passion and it is how I started in this field to begin with. So you're going to see a lot of that here. Maybe you'll see brand reviews, but go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, please, so we can beat the YouTube algorithm, and let me know what you will want to see next in the comment section. All right. Thank you.